In the Kickstarter video, you have a image of a man fighting off another man on a boat, or there's a fight that takes place. So we see that it's a turbulent environment, some of the filming that you've been exposed to. Are you worried about your own personal safety?
I'm worried about Christopher's safety all the time when he's out there and I'm not there.
Really? Yeah. We told me that. Well, my mom is. I know that much. And now Stephanie. It's filming in Cambodia in particular. I'll just speak for that because it's probably different in different countries. But you kind of get a pass a bit for being a Westerner, and you have a certain degree of protection that locals don't have. And so a lot of journalists who are Cambodian and a lot of environmentalists who are Cambodian are either imprisoned or sometimes disappeared, or there are some prominent cases of very public killings that, of course, never really get solved or get tied to anybody. So it's a lot more dangerous for them than it is for people like us going in. However, when you're out on the open oceans, a lot of things can accidentally happen. And actually we, in the course of making this film, learned about local Cambodian Cham fisherman who was killed by Vietnamese fishermen. And of course that also, nobody was held responsible for that. And so there is a certain amount of danger for sure. And particularly on these boats, they're really small. And, there's not a lot of places to run and hide. You can't just run away. It's like you're stuck there. So there was a few moments, which isn't in the Kickstarter video and might not even be in the film, but where we were out on patrol. That's what MCC calls it when they go looking for illegal fishermen. It's called a patrol. Not that they necessarily go looking, but when they kind of come in their area, they'll kind of go out to try to stop them. They take the nets. And so when we do some of those things, they're usually at night because that's when the illegal fishermen are operating. And they operate without lights. So you go out there, it's pitch black. And Stephanie, when we went out the first time, we had an encounter. So then what happens is they'll like kind of creep up on the illegal fishermen, and then they turn on their lights and start shining lights on them. But then the fishermen have brighter lights that they shine back on you, and they usually fish in groups. And so what they do is they drop their nets and they start encircling you, and there's lots of yelling in Khmer, which is the language in Cambodia. And it's actually really kind of scary. It might not come off that way on the video, but in the moment, it's like anything can happen. And one time when I was there the second time, we went out and we didn't have the advantage. It was like a new moon, so there was no light basically. And you could barely make out some shapes. And all of a sudden we realized that we were pretty much surrounded by 4 or 5 giant, actually I think it might've been as much as 7 giant Vietnamese paratrawlers. And you can hear on the radio, and then, their lights start coming on when they see, and everybody knows who Paul is and what they do. So they're on the lookout for Paul, and that's why they travel in groups, because then they can kind of like combat them better. So anyways, at that point, they kind of surrounded us, and, we actually kind of moved away because we were worried about getting, too far away from, they have a medium-sized boat, a speedboat, and a big boat. And if we were too far away from reinforcements in the big boat, then it could be like an issue. So but nothing ended up happening that night. But there's moments where, yeah, like when it feels in control, like it's not as scary. But the moment when you feel like, oh, this has now gotten out of control, that's when, your little warning bells go off. Having said that, nothing's happened so far. And I think that, legally speaking, like in getting in trouble with the government, there's some risk there in terms of they could just kind of decide that they don't want to tolerate us anymore. And not so much, I don't think they would necessarily arrest us, but they could definitely kick us out of the country and say we can't come back, and then we wouldn't be able to finish our movie. So there's a little bit of fear of that too, which is, I think is a little unfair in a way, just not unfair, but I think that, we are trying to do with our movie what's best for Cambodia, obviously as we see it, but which is shed light on this sort of issue, because a lot of these illegal fishermen are really, what they're doing is, besides just destroying the environment, which as Westerners is probably like what we're initially drawn to, but in terms of the people in the country, there's a lot of people who live off of the ocean and subsistence fishing who are having harder and harder time being able to do that because the fish are disappearing, the habitat for the fish is disappearing. They'll put their crab pots in or their own smaller nets that just get taken up by the big fishing boats, and they lose their livelihood. And they also get into skirmishes with these larger illegal fishermen. And so there is people there who kind of need this to happen for them. Not necessarily the movie, but like the work that Paul and Matt are doing. And so getting that out there to the larger audience, I think, is going to be very helpful. And I would hope that the government would understand that that's what we're trying to do, and we're not there to like make them look bad, but to try to like sort of correct some injustices, perhaps.
Yeah, and
the mail's here.